Here we are. We are here reviewing a game that was submitted by Sonoy as one of my channel point rewards on my channel. You can submit a game for review and then I analyze it. He's given me the second Princess game in a row. Princess, of course, not my favorite variant, but you know, we're gonna do what we can here. This was a game between Sonoy, who had the white pieces, Void, who had the black pieces. Princess, of course, for anyone who's not aware, is a variant of 5D chess where the queen is basically a bishop plus a knight, the way that it is in regular chess. In default standard 5D chess, the queen is stronger. It has more moves that it can go, more directions that it can go than a bishop and a knight combined. Normally it can go in 3 of the 4 dimensions in the game, or 4 at a time, which means that when you open up a diagonal to your king, then like a queen here in a few turns would normally be mate, but in Princess that is simply not the case. Oh, bishop plus rook. Yeah, I apologize. I have this thing where for some reason on stream I call my rooks knights. No idea where it comes from. I don't know anyone else who does this. It's not even like they're not remotely similar pieces, but for some reason I make that mistake all the time. So what I meant is that a queen is a bishop plus a knight. Or that's hilarious. A queen is a bishop plus a rook. Okay. We're close to hour 7 of the stream. Cut me some slack. Okay. Let's just get started. All right, knight f3. Knight f3 makes sense. I mean, the weakest square on the board is obviously f2 and f7 respectively for each of the 2 colors. They're the pawns that are singly defended by the king and no other piece. So in a game where time travel is involved, you want to restrict access to this square to the greatest extent possible. In standard 5D chess, a queen can reach this square from one of the diagonals. You can time travel f2 from like h4 with the black queen, or from b6. But in Princess, because triagonals are not accessible, only diagonals are accessible, that's not a move. You just can't do it. So you basically cover your bases entirely with this move, knight f3. So knight f3, knight f6, very standard opening moves in Princess, as well as every other 5D chess variant. So in this game, black responds with a ballsy d5. d5. Now this is interesting. Ordinarily, in like standard or in turn 0, any of the standard variants, knight out followed by d5 is a standard opening, or in this case as white, d4. Why is that? Well, like I said, you're trying to restrict access to the f2 and f7 squares respectively. The only way to get to f2 is along this file, or realistically along this diagonal. So by playing knight f3 and then playing d5, you restrict access to the square from both of these directions, right? Here, d5 is a move that you would normally see after knight f6, because it would block this diagonal. However, you don't actually have to block this diagonal because there's no piece in Princess that can travel along this diagonal to this square. So this is like a kind of unnecessary, superfluous move. Now white has the option of like playing this knight out, pushing this pawn or something like that, or maybe pushing this pawn and then playing this bishop out, and then traveling to turn 1 and sacking on f7, which isn't as good in Princess as it is in regular 5D chess, to be fair, but still, you know, knight f6 is like usually what you see here. I mean, this grabs space in the center, you know, like it's still fine for like 2D chess reasons. You don't have to worry about this triagonal being open because again, there's no queen to exploit it. So I have to remember that when I do you know, my analysis here. Turn 1 Princess sacks are trivial. I don't know what you mean by trivial, but probably you mean they're not lethal. At best, you get inactive soft mate. Yeah, but you can get an active soft mate, you know, for the same reason, like it's the same moves that you get the inactive soft mate in like standard, right? I don't know. I feel like having the king out there, like all you had to do was sacrifice a bishop in a timeline, and then the opponent's king is in jeopardy. I don't know. It's kind of scary, right? I don't know. I don't know if trivial is the word that I would use there. But I also haven't played very much standard, or sorry, very much princess. Played a shitload of standard. So anyway, okay. I mean, the only way that you can prevent the sack after this is by playing f5. Which is unlikely. It's probably not a good move. Bishop f5 is always possible, I suppose. So you could do that. All right, okay. As white, at the start of the game, you don't want to do anything too crazy. You want to develop your pieces in a variant like this where there isn't too much early game degeneracy. Same with reverse royalty. To some extent, defended pawn. You can be a little bit more lax about your openings compared to like turn 0 or standard, or even 2 timelines to some extent. So, we're just going to play reasonable developing moves. In this case, that means c3, which is reasonable. Why not? C3 is a little bit awkward because it blocks the development of the knight. If you're going to play d4 anyway, then c3 is fine if you're like setting up for that kind of structure. I suppose c3 is okay because it gives you the flexibility to play d4 or not. The thing is, if you play c3, there's like no way that you're going to develop your bishop with like a fianchetto to the queen side, right? Because it's blocked like this. So you're pretty much signaled that you're probably going to play a cool d4 here in a second. I mean, d3 is possible, not fantastic. And then it's difficult to develop your knight. So I don't know. Actually, knight out might not be the worst here. Knight out, attacking this pawn. Yeah, it could be a good princess opening. Let's see. Not too much that we can derive. Since there aren't as many like early game tactics, we don't want to go like all in on the deep analysis of like these crazy 5D lines in princess. We kind of want to get to the good stuff sooner rather than later. F5 is what we see. Okay. Like I said, if you're looking at it from the perspective of preventing travels to f7, which I recognize are a lot less important in princess than they are in standard or turn 0, this is the way to do it. Because now there's no, if you know your 5D chess fundamentals, now the white player just can't get to, because if you look at, okay, they want to get to f7, then they would have to travel through f6, but then f5 is blocked, so it can't be done. Can't be done. f5. Okay. d5, f5. What an opening. Okay, so let's take a look at this. I'm at a bit of a loss. Okay, because like in regular 2D chess, a lot of chess coaches, GM Benjamin Feingold, often says never play f3 or f6. Just like don't move the f pawn. Why? I mean, because it's like, integral to the defense of your king, right? You're like weakening. Now you're like need to defend this pawn if it's going to be probed, and you need to exercise some amount of, like it's not like f5 here doesn't grab like incredibly valuable space. Usually this f pawn plays like a big role in the defense of some key squares like g6 and e6. I mean, you're not as worried about opening up lines to get like mated on a triagonal like in standard or turn 0, but that doesn't have to be, okay, like there are reasons why this doesn't lose. There are reasons why, it's not like this is immediately punishable with a lethal counterattack, but if that can't be the bar for moves that you play, right? Because otherwise, like by the same merit, h6 is like just as good a move. F5 here is questionable because what's the follow-up? If you're talking about, okay, I'm going to play g6, bolster this pawn, and then like frappuccino my bishop on the king side, well, it's going to stare down like a pawn chain, right? Because d5 is probably coming because there's no other way to activate the dark square bishop for white. So, you know, I think this ends up being more of a liability than an asset. Especially in 5D chess, like, yes, there's no queen to do the triagonal, but this knight can hop in here and cause you some trouble. I don't know. It's questionable, but I applaud the gumption. It's not every day that you see d5, f5. You know, this is the mark of a person who is trying to pave the way. He's a maverick. He's saying, you know what? The road less traveled, I'm going to be the one to tamp down that earth and make the way for those in front of me. Or, sorry, for those behind me, you know? Like, the d5, f5 is a move that you play for posterity. That's what I'm going to say about f5. Okay, let's move on. All right. f5 crazy. How do you respond as white? I don't think you have to respond as white. I think you just play d5 and you're kind of laughing, right? Or d4 rather. This is just so structurally weakening. I think it's not fantastic. I don't think you have to go crazy. I mean, maybe like an e3 here, but then at the end of the day, how are you going to develop this bishop if you don't d5 here, d4 here first? And it's difficult to develop any other piece. I don't think that something like knight e5 immediately has any teeth, or knight g5. That's not fantastic. Let's see what happens in game. Okay, we get Princess c2 attacking the pawn. The pawn is, of course, defended, so it's not really attacking the pawn. But it is putting pressure on the pawn. Now, how much do I agree with this? I don't know. It's a bit inflexible. You know, so the advice that you get a lot at the in classical chess as well is, you know, you want to develop your minor pieces before, like, your queen, for example, or your rooks. And the reason for that is that, you know, if you're, like, leading with such a strong, important piece, then at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to, like, you're not going to trade it into the front line of your opponent, right? There aren't any tactics, like we mentioned before, where you... There aren't any, like, sort of degenerate tactics where you're going to get a travel or, like, a quick mate along one of these triagonals. They just don't exist because it's princess, right? It's not standard. So, that being said, is it worth doing this early? Because then you get all of these pieces are blocked in, right? There's no follow-up unless you've got, like, a crazy lethal combination prepped here with these two pieces. But I'm just not very excited by this idea. So let's see where this goes. I'm skeptical. At best, you get an active soft mate. Mage says at worst. That's an important clarification, Mage. Right, you are. Okay. All right, but who are we to, you know, we're here to commentate. We're not here to judge. Okay, so what do you do? Well, I mean, you probably play a g6 here. Honestly, you can ignore it because it's defended. I think the knight f6 here works pretty well. Unclear how you're going to defend this pawn. It's pretty sketchy after... pretty sketchy after f5 because now there's no pawn that can defend this pawn, right? How are you going to develop this bishop as well, especially with d5? It's a clunky structure. It's a clunky structure, and I'm not convinced. I'd probably just develop the minor pieces. For aforementioned reasons, I'm not super jazzed about a Frappuccinoed bishop on g7 because it just looks at what's about to be a big ass dark square pawn chain. But let's see what happens. Okay. Turn 3, we get g6. All right, prepping the Frappuccino, throwing an extra defender onto this pawn. Again, not super necessary. Like, you can't even travel onto this pawn. And if you did, it wouldn't be fantastic. But this is how our players have chosen to develop, so let's just move right along. What happens after g6? We get d3. No, I was right the first time. I was just confused. d3. Okay. Hold up. All right, so something does not compute here. let's talk about why. You just spent a turn early game before you have any pieces developed to develop a piece which keeps other pieces sort of blocked in. Like there's an opportunity cost to developing the princess to c2 immediately. It doesn't really threaten any like lethal combination as far as I can tell. The defense here you had to expect anyway, right? Not that it's not defended, but whatever. And then as soon as you play this, presumably to allow this piece some amount of activity here on either the king side or maybe hopping over to the queen side, the princess side, I suppose. You block that piece in that you just spent a turn developing, probably out of turn, you know, like it wasn't timely. So you get like no compensation. You lose the tempo, and you don't even develop. Like what was wrong with playing d4 here is what I have to ask myself. Because d3 also prevents. Like this bishop can get out here, but now what does this bishop do? You know, your light square bishop. You hate to, in general, if you're gonna move either the d pawn or the e pawn one. Might have been a mouse slip, honest, but you have to press the submit moves button. I don't remember why I did this. Okay, I was gonna ask Sonoy. If it's a mouse slip, then we can say it's a mouse slip. Light square bishop is Sag. Light square bishop is hella Sag. I just have to press enter. I submit with F. But to be fair, I've done that. I did that today against Graven, right? I was like, okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go queen a5 on this board, queen b4 on this board, and then I just went queen a5 and hit the submit button, and it was a misclick. So to be fair, it happens. It happens. It happened to me, especially when there's a timer. It's early on in the game, but you know, you're trying to blitz through that opening. Maybe you've got an idea of how you're gonna develop. d4, I think, is an obvious, pretty good move. But d3 was played, so we're just going to deal with it. Then a face palm into the submit. Yeah. Yeah, face palm into the submit. Yeah. All right, d3 happened. Interesting structure. I wonder how you make lemonades, you know, with these lemons. Maybe you push c4. I guess that's kind of a sunk cost fallacy situation. But like a flank attack isn't the worst. This bishop now, how the hell do you get this bishop involved? You really don't want to push the e-pawn. I mean, e3 is not the worst in the world. Maybe you're just down a tempo and like you develop this bishop anyway. And then you push like d4 at some point, and then you push e3, and then you get your light square bishop into the game. It's not the worst. It's not the end of the world. It's funny how this ends. Can't wait. Graven says, I'll be gone for an hour. If you're still here, I'll come back for the rest of the game. Awesome. All right. Hopefully we catch you before the stream's over, Graven. We're at the 7-hour mark. I'll probably end stream in about an hour, which is probably how long this analysis will take. So we'll see. We've been banging out the 8-hour streams for the past few weeks. Feels good. Okay. Let's not get distracted. d3 happens. Knight f6 happens. Sure. You develop your minor piece, and knight f6 is what you should. It's an obvious play. There isn't very much to say about this. Now how the hell do you develop? How the hell do you develop as white? You know, there's actually something to be said for bishop g5 here. Is that true? Might be. Bishop g5's here. Bishop g5 here is really annoying because if you don't defend the knight, like if you just played h6 here, this knight is basically hanging. So I have to remember in 5D chess, in 5D chess in general, the e-pawn basically doesn't defend anything. Why is that? Well, if we have here and then h6 is played, then you get bishop takes f6 and then e takes f6. And suddenly there is a direct path from the future along this file onto the king in the past. So you can play something like e4 in like 3 turns after that capture happens, and then bishop e2 is actually checkmate. So that's pretty not good. Providing your opponent a checkmate is generally discouraged in chess, or at least I try to discourage it on my stream. And so this really forces this Frappuccino to happen. There's kind of no other option. I mean, I don't know what else you'd do. Maybe princess up. I mean, I guess you could play it like knight back. And then if like takes, you capture with the knight. Or, I mean, that feels pretty bad. You could move the knight up. And then there isn't that much that white is threatening here. But the fact that this isn't under attack, you can then just kick the knight and you're probably sitting pretty. Because then where does this knight go? Here, you take it for free. Here, it's a mess. It's a mess. So I kind of like bishop g5. What actually happens, though? Bishop g5. Fantastic. Bishop g5 happens. After bishop g5 happens, really, basically the only thing that you can really do is Frappuccino the bishop, defends the knight. Then if you trade, there's nothing going on. However, I mean, again, Black's not super happy with this fianchettoed bishop, man. d4 is going to come eventually, and when it does, what the hell are you doing? What's this bishop doing? This knight is pseudo-pinned. Not really, because the princess is defending e7, but I don't know. It doesn't feel fantastic. Okay. White. Now what do you do as white? Probably continue development. There are sort of crazy c4 ideas, and then if takes, you just take with the princess. If pushes, then you take with the knight. c4 actually challenging this awkwardly placed bishop here on d5 feels decent. I feel like if you take and then you trade c-pawn for c-pawn, you're probably happy. I mean, you kind of really have wasted a tempo here with this princess move. Not the best thing in the world. This triagonal, I mean, playing 5D chess, you got to look at this and, you know, see dollar signs in your eyes, because something like a4 ordinarily would be mate, but this is princess, so it's just regular check. Are there any tactics? Not really, right? What are the tactics here? If you check here, I don't think accomplishes anything. You just want to move ahead with development. Yeah, maybe like an e3 here, preparing a d4 so that this bishop can get out here or something. Maybe a knight move here so that knight move here can happen, and then you replace the one on f3. I don't know, you just develop, right? What do we actually see? We see princess a4 check. All right, that is a 2D check, not a 3D check, because this is princess. And the obvious play here is c6. I mean, alternatives. Bishop here is fine, but you're probably going to move this bishop elsewhere. That's the other problem with this, by the way, is the problem with f5 here is that it prevents you from being able to develop your bishop to any your light square bishop as black anywhere that you want. Because if you fianchetto, then I mean, obviously you can't do it now, but you're going to be staring down this d5 pawn, right? And if you don't, then you're sort of hemmed in. It's bad news bears. But here, the defensive choice, which I feel is pretty natural, is c6. All right, here, our hero with the white pieces, Sonoy, chooses to trade. Now, you'll hear this a lot in classical chess. I think literally never played d4. Wow, okay. Apparently d4's never played this game. I don't know how that's possible, but we'll find out together. You don't want to make a trade if you don't have to. In regular chess as well as 5D chess, and this is a lesson that I think I've benefited a lot from learning recently. You know, you're like not quite sure what to do. You feel like your position's developed. In this case, it's really not. Like you've got these minor pieces hanging out on their home squares, but you know, whatever. In general, you're like, okay, let me, I don't have very much to do. Let me, you know, take away a key defender in his position or something like that. This, in general, you always want to be like, you want to have a tangible benefit from any trade that you make, because if you don't make it, then in general, you enable your opponent to develop his pieces. Like if you're sacking a piece into a piece that he's got on his side of the board, it took your piece more moves to get there than his piece, because it's on, you know, his side of the board. So you've like lost tempi. This is one of the only pieces that you have in the attack. So like removing one of your developed pieces isn't so good, you know, in general. And then your opponent's pretty happy if there isn't like a lethal combination here. taking away your more developed pieces for their less developed pieces. They're just happy with that, right? In this case, is there like a lethal tactical combination? I'm not so sure. Now, e5 is inaccessible for your knight. What is this knight actually doing? Not a lot. It can't really jump in here because then it gets stuck and then traded for, especially if you push d4 in a little bit. I mean, okay, well, push d4 doesn't actually work because then this square is hoppable onto, but you know, after something like knight b d2, this square is taken away anyway. I don't know. Okay, Sonoy says, I needed this knight gone. That was a tangible benefit for me. All right, so the man himself contends that there's a tangible benefit to this. So let's see how this plays out. Obviously, the bishop recaptures because if you take here, that's pretty much suicide. So bishop takes f6. Now we strike in the center with e4. 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 Interesting. Interesting. I don't know if it was an actual benefit. I just accepted the risk because I wanted the knight gone. But why? Why did you want the knight gone? What have you gained? You know? Now, in general, yeah, it'd be nice if my opponent didn't have as many pieces, especially around his king. But now I have fewer pieces pointed at his king, you know what I mean? And pieces are like much stronger together than alone in regular chess, but also in 5D chess. Like it really, like a two-piece combination is actually, you know, just like really fantastically strong in 5D chess. There are a lot of mating nets that you can create with two pieces, much more than with a single piece. E4 in general in 5D chess is super ballsy, and in Princess that's no exception because the mate happens along the file. Princesses, obviously, like bishops, can attack diagonals, and so this is kind of spooky. This is a little bit spooky, I'm not gonna lie. Here, so if recaptures, then you have recaptures, and if takes, you take with the princess, but you've removed your two central pawns in exchange for your opponent's f-pawn and d-pawn with the e-pawn doubly defended. Pushing c4, and if they take with princess, knight e5, princess f7 is a good idea. Oh yeah, for sure. No, as I think that pushing with the c-pawn the turn before instead of taking the knight, I think that that's pretty strong. I think that's pretty strong, especially because you threaten, like, if takes, retakes can't happen. I think that's a decent play. The only problem with that is that you open yourself up after, like, the knight moves to a Discoverino onto this undefended square. So, and then you sort of force yourself to play knight c3, which obviously you want to do to develop the knight anyway. So I don't know. I don't really know. It's hard to say. All right, bishop takes e6 in any case. Here, okay, so e4 looks spooky. e4 looks spooky, and I don't see how much compensation you receive without the rest of your pieces developed. Getting rid of this pawn is super helpful. Because the d5 pawn in 5D chess serves a very important purpose, similar to the one that it serves in 2D chess, but even more so. The d5 pawn blocks this really important diagonal to the f7 square. So if you kick this away, then suddenly there are a lot of like crazy travels and combinations that are possible. If you don't have access to triagonals, it's a lot less scary. But I don't know. Princess a5 instead of bishop takes f6, so force the e-pawn to be undefended. Princess a5 is this trolling? To force the e-pawn to be undefended. Oh, instead of, I see here on this board. Oh, okay. Can you win with that? Yeah, there's a combination there, man. Okay, Mage points out Mage points out an interesting combination. If you play Princess f5, sacking the princess takes here. Suddenly you've got a board where it's your turn, and there are no defenders on this square. So all you do then is, like, you move your knight in, you feign some shenanigans. Maybe this princess comes in here and threatens some shenanigans, and then you pull this bishop back at some point, and you travel onto the board where you take the pawn here. Because it checks this king in the past, only legal move on that board will be king takes. If he Jurassics back to the point where this travel happened, this bishop can recapture on the other board. So there is like a defense, there's a recapture that can be easily set up. However, if they don't do that, if there's a way that you can prevent that, like maybe you come up with a board, like if they go to this board, which is the one before you make the move that creates all of this situation, then there's like a check that you can, if he goes to any of these boards, then you can always check with the princess. So actually, maybe it's impossible for them to set up a recapture. And so once you've traveled with the bishop, as soon as king takes, then knight here's mate in 1. And it's not easily, like, you can't set up a simple recapture from the other board. So actually, there's something to that. That's really interesting. Soft mating travel after that lull, but it doesn't work. I don't think it's good, but it's interesting. I think the only reason that it's not good is that the opponent can prevent the travel from happening. Like, as soon as princess takes princess, then they can just push e6 the next turn, and it's defended by the bishop, and it prevents the travel, and they're up a princess. But after the travel happens, I think it's kind of lethal, man. It's pretty, I think it's pretty good. But anyway, it's too ballsy. I wouldn't play it. Yeah, so of course you just pray to the 5D chess gods. Not my style. Although maybe if I'm rebranding myself as Quantum Jesus, it should be my style. But you don't want to play hope chess. Where you just consider your own moves and not the strength of your opponent's counterplay. It goes like doubly or triply for 5D chess. It's not going to work, and even if it does work, then you haven't gained insight into like 5D attacking intuition. You've just bought yourself a game out of luck, basically. So, but it's cute, it's cheeky, and it's possible that it might actually work in a pinch. I mean, a free princess looks pretty juicy. Okay. We're not going to spend too much time on that. E4 is played, all right? E4 super Chad move. What do you take with? I probably capture with the F pawn first to force them to recapture before you recapture with this pawn. Even if you recapture with it, I'm not sure that you do recapture with this pawn. Why is that? If you recapture with the D pawn, then white's done what they wanted to, which is open up like a one-way ticket to F7, and then they get to even like close this up. Well, they probably don't want to lose the knight, so they probably move the knight somewhere. Moving knight here actually doesn't look fantastic, but then after takes, you recapture with the bishop, so I'd probably take with the F pawn here. What happens in the game? Okay, in the game they take with the D pawn. What do you do now as white? I don't know. You probably move the knight, right? Doesn't enable a travel. It's not a very good travel. If takes, then you take here because you want the light square bishop here anyway. Probably. Takes doesn't work, and they can't attack with the knight. This pawn is pinned. If you're pushing e5, you're a lunatic. I think you probably move the knight. Because it's also sketched to enable like a princess travel along this file. I think there's some scary stuff that maybe could happen in like 4 or 5 turns. But in the game, what do we get? In the game, we get d3 takes e4. Okay, fair enough. All right. Then f takes e4 happens. And then, obviously, we recapture the princess. How's the position changed? I don't like this for white. You've traded your e-pawn for your opponent's f-pawn. And on top of that, You've exchanged D pawns. Feels pretty bad. You have now given black a board to travel to where a princess can, like, many turns from now, just goes to D1 here on a board where it's defended by itself. And so you just lose if you don't close this up in, like, enough turns, which feels pretty terrible. You've pinned your princess here to your own king. Otherwise, you open up the file, and then there's a quick, like, bishop e6 mate that's going to come here. Have you given yourself sufficient attacking opportunities? Arguably, but probably not. Doesn't look great, man. I think white had the opportunity to give themselves a pretty decent position. I'm not sure that they managed here. This open D file is hella spooky. I mean, you can close it up, but it's gonna be kind of easy to open because, like, the only thing you've got defending here is the pawn, and then if you, like, exchange takes here, then the princess gets in here, and then they can go to A4 and travel from there. Like, there are a lot of ways to get to D1. I don't know. I'd be scared. But what do you do? How do you convert as black? You want to develop your pieces. There aren't any, like, immediate 5D threats that you have to defend against. You don't want to block the princess in with this knight. Knight A3, I mean, knight's on the rim. Shit's looking grim. A catchphrase that I coined earlier this stream. So, you know, feels pretty bad, man. But then you can hop in with knight c5 here, and it's not easily coverable because the dark squares, white's dark squares just look pretty bad. I mean, this knight, this princess, this bishop, they're all in light squares. Takes here is fantastic. Black just wants to buy time so that they can travel, right? Probably you develop the bishop. Bishop kicking the princess here seems pretty annoying. Where does the princess go? Where do the princess go in this situation? Are you worried? Are you worried about princess c4 as black here? What does it threaten? You can't travel along a triagonal, so it doesn't look amazing. I don't think there are any good travels. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. You just develop your pieces as black. What does black actually do in this position? Where are we at? Turn 10. All right, so we actually do get bishop f5, which seems annoying. Kicks the bishop. Where do you go with this bishop? C4 seems good. I don't really know how you follow up, and you kind of block in your light square bishop here. Honestly, you're kind of screwed here. Why is that? Okay, so the same way that you phase... Is this true? Let me think. It is true. The same way that you phase, like when you're trying to mate the opponent, like access an opponent's piece by pushing a piece forward in order to propagate the timeline from the future into the past. If you move backward, then yeah, kicking this princess is the obvious play here, by the way. I don't know why he's deliberating so much. Because then you open the file, right? This is like 100% the thing that you do. Wow, I must be really tired. All right, okay. If you move the princess back, which I think actually happens. Yeah, e3 is the move that's played here. If you look at the squares to this king from black's perspective, Now there is E1. E1, E2, E3, E4. So black has, like, this threatens mate next turn. Princess here threatens mate the turn after. So you actually have mate here as black. And it's very difficult. White has to sacrifice a piece and probably then some in order to not lose the game immediately. Like, princess here threatens princess here mate, because after it takes. And that's hella spooky. So I don't really, not to mention you've got this travel back to this board that you still have to worry about right here. This looks very bad. This looks very bad for white, but hey, it's possible. The backwards moves like this, because usually the thing that's defending the king is a pawn, which doesn't move backwards. You usually don't notice this. So I wouldn't blame either player for missing this, but it is important to note, it's like the reverse phase. It's like you're phasing your king into the future rather than your piece in order to be able to mate the opponent's king in the past. So that's bad. This is bad. Okay, now black doing this threatens mate in 1. Actually, black doing this threatens mate in 1 here and here or something like that. Well, no, not here because there are 2 pieces defending, but so you definitely want to go right here. Here, princess here is a no-brainer. You do threaten... Actually, princess here is a no-brainer, because you either win next turn immediately or you get a 3-turn earlier travel to this here on this board, right? Princess d5, I think here wins, like straight up. This isn't what's played. What is played is a disappointing bishop b1. I get it. You're trying to stall for... No, I don't. You've got the bishop pair staring down the queen side. There's a lot of tricky shenanigans that you can come up with. I get that you want to buy time for this travel to happen. I understand that, okay, maybe it's difficult to see that this threatens mate in 1, or maybe mate in 2. I haven't done the math. But again, you don't want to make trades unless you are getting a tangible benefit. Here, this bishop is grabbing so much space. It's covering the light squares, preventing white from developing here. You're trading your light square bishop, which is in this prime location, for a piece that isn't developed and doesn't have a clear square to develop to. And you enable at the same turn your opponent's undeveloped rook to develop as well, to grab here and to contest the file, right? Maybe after something like bishop e2, this is I don't think that this is a very good move. And there's an obvious missing of the mate here that I think both players probably missed, because it's kind of esoteric, you know, you don't see the backwards opening up the reverse phase from the king tactic very often. It doesn't come up very frequently. So, you know, it can be excused, but alas, this is what happens. Forced, because this checks the king in the past. I didn't miss it. I thought I lost. Well, it is what it is. A like literal forced only legal move because of the check in the past. Now white is very happy. Okay, apparently Sonoy thought, oh shit, I'm fucked, which is fair enough. I mean, what else could you do? Well, you could move the princess all the way back. maybe moving the princess back is the right call anyway. Because you can play knight out here next turn. Here, this happened. But if... Okay, so knight here. If this happens and then knight here, then takes... And you lose. Because if takes, loses. And if you don't takes, then this sack happens soon. It looks pretty grim. Anyway, okay. Well, black here has thrown white a lifeline, which they receive with open arms. Now, how does black execute the game plan? Forward princess might do it. Forward princess might do it to make this sack happen a little bit sooner. What actually happens? Castles. Castles. Castles is a weird one. I mean, you're buying time. You're waiting for a princess travel. You have an undeveloped knight. Your king is actually sitting very pretty on e8. Like, it's in front of a pawn that's defended by 2 pieces. Castling is a liability in 5D chess often because suddenly, you know, like, you place your king beside a pawn that isn't defended and you open up a lot of, you know, now there's like some checks here that can happen. Man, what you enable this bishop to develop with check and you don't have any pawns in the center anymore because you've weakened your light squares because you just traded in your bishop. Big yikes. Big yikes here. Now white is seeing dollar signs. White is very happy with this incredible turn of events. And okay, the obvious move here, I mean, you do want to prevent this travel. It's not quite there yet. You've got another like 3 turns, but at some point maybe you want to worry about that. But you know, whatever. Whatever, you're developing with check here, and I think that this is probably the best move, so yes, I'm really happy with this. Yeah, definitely. Alright, what do you do now? Blocking doesn't really make a ton of sense. Move the king is what happens in the game. That's just what we'll go with. I mean, actually, maybe rook here does make some amount of sense, although then you run into the princess here, threatens not mate because this is princess, but then you got to pull your princess away. All right, well, in any case, we don't have to worry about triagonals, and king h8 happens. Now we see rook b d1. Well, this is the only, it's rook d1. The b was superfluous. Kicking the princess, which is absolutely integral. I mean, if this trade happens, then you're incredibly happy because then you can just block the file right afterward, and you've won the princess for bishop exchange. Man, things look pretty bad for black. Yeah, so this is the way that you prevent the sack, which is about to happen in just a few turns. So this move makes a ton of sense. Knight b d7 happens. Develops the knight. Blocks the rook from coming in here. You're not very happy with the situation. What would I have preferred? I don't really know. The position is pretty Monka-esque for black. I don't know that you had very much option. Dude, I don't even know. I don't even know what I do here. After king h8, I thought now I have a win. After I saw bishop b1, I thought, okay, white has the win. Hands down. Hands down. Princess h3 looks good. Neither player can play princess h3. Oh, h6? Princess h6 definitely looks good. I'm with you there. Yeah, I'm with you there. Dude, a lot of moves look good here. all roads kind of lead to mate here for white. All right, so this happens. We understand why. Yeah, Monka S for sure. All right, next move we do get Princess h6. Yeah, there isn't like a much better way to develop to the H file. The problem is that you can't like take this pawn one turn in the past because it will recapture itself. So it's not amazing, but it's very good. It's pretty damn good. Oh, I can't. Let's see about that. All right, we'll see. We'll see what happens here. Okay. The pawn recaptures itself, and there's no. I guess you could pull the bishop over. I don't know. I don't really know. Okay. Now we have Princess c7. Connecting the rooks. I mean, this one was already defended, but then if the rook trades, then maybe... Then again, the princess would recapture, and it would enable the travel, so that would be bad for white anyway. But, you know, connecting the rooks, you know, in a dire situation as this, connecting the rooks isn't the worst idea in the world. What would I have preferred? You don't want to move the bishop because then, like, princess, king takes, and then this is mate. So why not? We have princess c7. Bishop g8 check occurs. Probably buying... White's trying to buy himself a turn before he can sack, right? That's probably the idea. That's probably the idea. Bishop g8 and then rook takes is a very sensible move. You don't want to move the king. Wait, isn't princess takes rook mate? Here? After the rooks are connected? No. Come on. You got to follow along here, crazy. All right. This is all but forced. What do we get now? Now, we do get princess goes back one turn into the past. And takes the pawn. Now, because this princess is defended by this princess, only legal move is actually this pawn recaptures this princess. Ah, now you go back. I see. Okay. Very nicely done. So now this princess goes forward to here. And it's unclear how you actually... Black has some interesting... No, because they're in check, so they can't go into the past here. Never mind. Maybe this princess can go somewhere. No, because there's nothing on h6. And g6 hasn't been played forever. Okay, very, very well played. Very well done by Sonoy. Very well done by Sonoy. Right, let me make sure that this actually happens. Turn 17 to turn 18, h6, yes. Okay, so now on turn 17, we have this princess goes here. And I don't believe it's soon enough. For anything fantastic, but if this princess had gone... Oh, there are no triagonals. Never mind. Sorry, it's princess. All right, okay. This princess move happens. I mean, this isn't fantastic because the knight recaptures. You probably have a travel from here, right? Am I wrong about that? Wait, you have two... I feel like black probably has mate here. No? Hear me out. You go here. And then... Oh, check here wins the game. So you have to provide a check here, which you can do like this. Oh, but there are no triagonals. Okay, hold on. Probably not. Wow, it's so difficult to mate with the princess. God damn it. The princess is such a bad piece. Here takes looks pretty bad. Oh, wait, but no, you have... After bishop takes here, you don't have anything, right? So maybe this was the only... The fact that this is an available check means that this is probably... It's probably curtains. Because white has this check, I mean, you have to do something. Forcing as black. I guess you take here. But after takes here, you don't even really have a travel. And traveling to this board means that you provide your opponent a check. All right. Yikes. I think if this was a queen, then you had mate here as black. How do I mean? By that I mean, okay, like this queen travels to somewhere on this, like up here. And then from here, where there's no like check that can be delivered, the queen then travels to e4. And then it from e4 here mates the king here. It's doable with a princess as well, but the princess just can't do any triagonals, so... Princess is strictly better than bishop and rook, but still called a bad piece in comparison to the queen, right? It's got big shoes to fill. Sad princess noises. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Okay. This is probably forced. I don't see how black gets out of this. So let's see. Okay. Valiant effort here. This is a forcing move. You know, this like takes happens because he's in check. I mean, could move out of the way, but why wouldn't you just take here? Yeah, e5. All right, then the knight recaptures because it can. This is already check in the past, right? So you got to come up with a way to recapture, and it doesn't, it really doesn't look good, man. Really doesn't look good. Can you travel with here, and then it gets taken? You do have another travel, but you can't get a knight over there. If you could get a here, you're in check, that doesn't work. Here you can get checked, so that's pretty bad. If you could travel like maybe to this knight is here, so it doesn't even get to travel like that. Yikes. No, it looks pretty bad. If you could somehow like get to a board where you can play h6 up here, then you could have like the pawn recapture here on this board, but it just doesn't work. No, I think it's rip in peace. How does the game actually end? Let's just see. Bishop f6 goes to e6. One turn in the past, turn 17. This is actually close to surviving, but it isn't. Okay, so here this travel happens. The bishop on c4 captures on e6. The knight, no, the king on h8 goes to g7 here. Okay, so he's attempting to capture with the princess. The only problem is that this check exists, and that's probably how, yeah, that's how the game ends. All right. It was a valiant effort. Wow. The princess diagonal mate. The king almost gets there, but it definitely doesn't get there. Princess looks kind of lame visually too, right? It just lacks the flair, man. What a, like, I mean, Sorry to really harp on the princess here. On, you know, I know there's a lot of princess hate on my stream, but just look at it. It looks so impotent. You know, it's just it looks like Fisher Price brand queen. Well, that's why I made my texture pack. Yeah. Oh, it's not that bad. In any case, I think that there was a lot to learn from this game. I think there was the tactic that with the reverse phase. You really don't see that very often. It doesn't come up very often. I think there was some really interesting positional moves that you can learn from, like why these trades aren't fantastic. I really don't think there was adequate compensation at all for trading the bishop for the knight on f6. I think that like the amount of spatial dominance that you get from these bishops, and then that you give up by trading in the bishop, I think that there are a lot of points that really show like, okay, in general, these are moves or classes of moves that are admonished or, you know, like warned against in classical chess. And there's an immediate consequence in this game demonstrating why are these not moves that we like to make. It's just one less thingies in the crown. I think it makes a huge difference visually. Like the odd number having the thing in the middle, I think. Because like all the other pieces have like the one in the middle. Here there isn't. And I mean, it's just, there's something about the, because then the base, it ends up being more square because the base is like the same size. You don't have like the flaring out of like the impressive, you know, crown.